Alright, that was cool. So it's another year, and that means another new Call of Duty. For fans of the series, it might have felt like you've been playing a game of Russian roulette every time you bought a new release nowadays. It used to be that Infinity Ward was the studio that was making quality COD games, but after a few legal battles, it seems like everyone quit there to make Titanfall. So, now how can we tell if the yearly update to COD is any good? Well, hopefully that's where I come in. For those that aren't really familiar with Black Ops, it was a spin-off series from the mainline Call of Duties. It's really well known for its off-the-wall stories that are chock full of conspiracy and intrigue. It's something that really feels like Call of Duty's answer to Deus Ex. But weirdly enough, this time around, Activision actually chose to forego the single player altogether. So you might be reasonably wondering what makes Black Ops different from any of the other titles in the series if there isn't that unique storyline anymore. Well, ever since Black Ops 3, the series has been experimenting with something called specialists. For anyone who's played a game like Overwatch, this will all be pretty familiar. You get a unique cast of characters with unique equipment and abilities, and you essentially just use them to kill other players. Now I want to get into all of that, but there's something that everyone should be made aware of before they run out and buy this game, and it's unfortunately the technical issues with the game itself. I don't normally talk about technical stuff this early in the video. I just think it's important that people know what they're getting into before they get excited about this new release. Unfortunately, at the time of writing this review, Black Ops 4's multiplayer is plagued with a lot of strange technical issues ranging from micro stutters, FPS drops, and even fatal errors. I have friends that haven't been able to play the game for more than a few matches without their computers blue screening. Not to be outdone, apparently the Xbox One X has an issue where it closes the game after a few matches of blackout. And to add insult to injury, for anyone who bought the game on PC, they don't have the standard Steam refund to fall back on, since this game is sold exclusively through Activision's launcher. And this is actually made all the more unfortunate because Black Ops 4 is one of the most well-balanced and engaging multiplayer experiences I've had in quite some time. I don't want this entire video to be about the performance issues though, and it's my hope that with a few more patches, the game's performance will be a lot more consistent. Just make sure that you do your research before you buy the game. So with all that said, I'm sure most people here are actually concerned about how the game plays. Well, as I mentioned before, you'll be playing as one of 11 specialists when you join any multiplayer game. If you're a purist who is hoping that there might be a game mode without these specialists, unfortunately you're out of luck since right now there aren't any playlists that have removed them thus far. So if the idea of getting hit by a grenade launcher and dying instantly every once in a while isn't your idea of fun, you might want to wait until Modern Warfare 4 before you jump back into Call of Duty. Anyways, each specialist has two unique pieces of equipment. For example, you have Recon that provides vision on the map with a tac dart. He also provides his team with a momentary wall hack of about 20 seconds once or twice per game. It's incredibly useful for weeding out those campers or snipers who haven't moved apart from one-tapping you from the window all game. If you do want to try a more aggressive approach though, you can always try Ruin. He has a grappling hook that lets you maneuver to hard to reach places in seconds. This coupled with his gravity slam, well, just watch. Essentially, what you end up getting is a more dynamic feeling Call of Duty with these specialists. I found myself picking specialists that I thought would do well on certain maps and just generally based on my mood. I will say though that the balance isn't completely perfect. Case in point, specialists like Nomad and Crash feel considerably weaker than their counterparts. In Nomad's case, it seems like the dog AI got corrupted when it was copy-pasted over from Call of Duty Ghosts. I mean, just look at this.
Hostile UAV circling.
It should be said though that there are still a lot of familiar elements that exist in the game. It's not entirely surprises. You'll still see kill streaks such as the UAV or AC-130, and in most cases these just serve to punish teams that don't coordinate well enough to shoot them down. Real talk, it takes about 2 seconds to switch to a class with FMJ2 and destroy anything in the air within seconds. So it's kind of funny to see an attack helicopter racking up dozens of kills in a match when anyone could swap to a Titan and deal with it really quickly. Of course, you'll also have a standard assortment of primary weapons like SMGs, ARs, and sniper rifles. The balance of the game is really meant to mimic a sort of rock, paper, scissors approach where, depending on the range, a certain class will usually be better. For example, SMGs are better close up and in tight corners compared to ARs and sniper rifles, but at longer range, their drop-off and inconsistent spray patterns are generally weaker compared to the precision and accuracy of an AR or sniper. The reason why I say that specialists make this COD feel like one of the more dynamic in recent memory is how special specialists really throw a wrench into this familiar balance mechanic. For example, normally if a sniper has the high ground in an SMG, it'll have no problem taking pox shots from safety, but if the other player is running Ruin, they can just grapple up to the window and deal with them in seconds. Of course, the inverse can happen as well, as the sniper class can use recon to great effect. You can sit up in a tower safely, but now you have a tac dart warning you of any would-be backstabbers trying to kill you while you're aiming down the scope. It's these subtle changes that add a layer of surprise to engagements that otherwise would feel pretty stale for the 100th time. For the first time in a Call of Duty game, it really does feel like you're making decisions about when to use equipment or kill streaks, especially when it comes to objective game modes like Domination or Hardpoint. All in all, this game really feels like it has a loadout, specialist, and kill streak for everybody.
Hostiles have taken out objective UAV available for target.
If you're wondering how the gunplay feels, I'm happy to report that the weapons both feel and look great. They sound super impactful when firing, and while some people may not agree, I think that the time to kill in this game is perfectly balanced. In previous games in the series, it really felt like you were always getting shot in the back, with no way of turning things around. Thankfully in Black Ops 4, you have enough health and dexterity to turn around and outplay someone shooting you from behind. Of course, if you want something that's a little bit more realistic, you can always join hardcore playlists since it only takes about 1 or 2 shots to down an enemy. I highly recommend these playlists if you're going for specific gun challenges with a pistol or shotgun, since it essentially makes your life 100 times easier when it comes to trying to score one-shot kills or headshots. The highest praise that I can place on the game is that in the 150 hours or so playing multiplayer, I never really felt as though everyone was using that same weapon or gun because it was just better than the rest. It's actually crazy how diverse the mix of guns are in any given match. You'll actually see team compositions where they choose to run 2 SMGs and 1 sniper rifle while the rest have TAC or assault rifles. It weirdly ends up feeling tactical in a way that Call of Duty normally doesn't. There are also a lot more subtle changes that are happening in the game though. There are actually things that have been taken out. As most players that played Black Ops 3 will find, the movement in the game has been scaled back significantly. While you can still make up ground with Ruin's grapple, you can no longer wall jump or jetpack to greater heights. This ends up feeling like a positive though, as the more grounded experience of the movement means that newer players don't feel like they jumped into a game of Quake with characters kind of zipping around all over the place like in Black Ops 3. I will say that the inclusion of the stim pack means that you're not waiting in a corner while the red from your screen fades, and it means that matches have a much better pace to them than in other titles. If you're wondering about the maps of Black Ops 4, they provide a decent mix from small to larger maps. They have a good amount of verticality to them, which alleviates feeling like you're just walking into a maelstrom every time you peek a corner. Fan favorites like Firing Range and Nuketown return, but there's really something for everybody.
Not one yet.
I personally like Jungle just because it's a lush level that provides a lot more avenues for attack. If you're someone who plays TDM only usually, this might be a time to try out Domination or Hardpoint, since these maps are a lot more dynamic when people feel compelled to congregate and retain certain points in the map. My only real complaint is that a lot of these maps do tend to fall into the tired 3-lane structure of all COD maps. The other thing that I should mention while we're on the topic of the maps is the game's matchmaking. Now, normally the goal of any game's matchmaking will be to have teams of equal skill face off against each other. This is so that one team doesn't feel like they're dominating the other and making it boring for everybody. Visually speaking, both teams should look a little bit something like this. This essentially just means that everyone can contribute without feeling like they're a liability or that they're beating down someone half their size. However, Black Ops has matchmaking that looks something more akin to this. Essentially, in most games of Black Ops 4, there will be one player per side that's just miles ahead of everyone else. Most of the time they're already Prestige 10, they've played the game since launch without getting out of their chair it seems, and they have a suspiciously high KDA. Now you might think that this would be great for those two players, but it isn't even fun for them, because it means that it's up to them to capture all the objectives, score all the kills, and take out all the kill streaks while winning your team the game. It ends up feeling like they're babysitting your team and just hoping that you're not feeding the other Prestige 10 player a bunch of kill streaks. This is further exacerbated by the fact that kill streaks are earned by the individual rather than the team. For example, if you have a team of about 5 decent players versus 4 decent players and someone that's godlike, that team of 5 decent players is going to lose every time, because that one amazing player will be able to chain together huge kill streaks and call down as many strike teams, AC-130s, and thrusters that they want. This leads to games where one team loses so badly that people just quit. You know it's bad matchmaking when 5 players all leave a domination match and force the game to call a forfeit. This also has a negative impact on hot joining games as well, since every time you join a game in progress, you can be sure you're joining a total shit show, where the enemy team already has hellstorms and attack choppers raining down every few seconds. Mind you, this doesn't happen all of the time, but it happens enough that people have just started to leave matches once they realize it's skewed in the other team's favor. What really sucks though is when you have a great game with an enemy team that seems to be equally matched to yours, only for the matchmaking to remove them from your lobby afterward. Like, the score was 200 to 199, why couldn't we just play a few more matches together? Another thing that's a little disappointing as well is that the game doesn't seem to have a clan or team system. In an age where esports is a huge consideration for companies, especially for FPS games, it's a weird omission. Most modern titles have timed events and goals to work towards that ensure large swaths of people will stick with the game. It would be interesting if players had weekly challenges that had them join less played game modes or accomplish some interesting goal. I'm not trying to sound negative here, it just seems like there are a lot of things that are missing that are the result of a yearly COD update. And because of this, I don't think we'll ever see a competitive scene in COD that's as stable or as popular as games like Overwatch or League. Because what's to say someone who's amazing at Black Ops 4 will be any good at Modern Warfare 4? We have to get past this topic though, because I could honestly talk about it for years. Moving on, I guess I haven't really talked about perks yet. They're probably the element that has stayed the same the most over the years. For those that don't know, perks are split into 3 categories that will augment how you play the game. You can choose to prioritize picking up ammo over being able to see enemy equipment on your HUD, or choose to improve your vaulting instead of being able to aim down your sights quicker. This is really just another system of trade-offs where you make decisions based on the map, your playstyle, or how you want to respond to the enemy's playstyle. If you want to see the perks that I run and the loadouts that I've found some success with in multiplayer, I'll post them down in the description below. So it's that time of the video. I've held off on talking about the cosmetic stuff and microtransactions in the game as long as I could, because honestly, I still don't really know how I feel about it. Black Ops 4 has a system that's pretty similar to the Battle Pass that's being offered in Fortnite. However, you don't really need to pay for it, which is nice considering that you've already paid $60 for the base game. You do earn experience for these tiered rewards after every match, and you earn an assortment of stickers, emotes, and skins for your guns or specialists. Of course, you can always skip tiers if you want to pay money or buy a random skin that appears in the blackjack market every week, but this is entirely optional, of course, and it provides no in-game benefit apart from just looking kind of cool. The part that's really confusing to me, though, is the idea that someone's going to spend money on a skin that will at most last them a year. Unlike a game like Fortnite or League, players know that there is going to be a new Call of Duty released next year that essentially makes Black Ops 4 obsolete. I mean, just look at the difference between the amount of games that have come— oh god, you weren't supposed to see it. So I'm not really sure what Activision is trying to accomplish when it comes to these skins, and honestly, I don't know if they know either, because most of the skins that have been released so far haven't been all that great. If anything, it looks like they put more work into the emotes, which is another weird decision. In general, games like Overwatch and Fortnite have emotes as a way of emphasizing moments in the game. For Overwatch, it's something to do while you wait for the game to start, or while you're sitting on the payload. In Fortnite, they can be used to style on people after you kill them, or you get a victory royale. But in the multiplayer of Black Ops 4, these emotes are really just a poor fit. You can't use them in the pregame screen when you select your specialist, and you can't use them when you wait for the game to start. And even if I wanted to use one while I was capping the first point in domination, you can't cancel the animation once it started, so you end up kind of just standing there for an extra 3 seconds looking like an idiot. It's really just bizarre, and it seems like it was something made exclusively for the Blackout mode and then lazily shoved into the multiplayer. I really don't know what to call this other than a complete failure on Treyarch's part. Because as a guy who's played multiplayer for about 150 hours, I've yet to see someone use an emote in multiplayer. And I'm sure there are people who use these things in Blackout, but I have to imagine it's hurt sales by not being compelling to those people that just play multiplayer. Now that we're on the topic of prestiging though, I can confirm that the progression in the game is as brisk as ever. If you want to have access to all the weapons, equipment, and kill streaks in the game, it likely won't take you much more than a week or 2 to get, depending on how many piss bottles are underneath your desk. What? You earn points by providing vision or ammo or capturing objectives, as well as contributing to kills. The new EKIA system means that you're no longer penalized for not getting that last hit on the enemy. It sort of serves to inflate your ego, as your standard KDA is actually much less, but it also means that people aren't screaming at you for stealing the last few points that they needed for their AC-130. Of course, you can also prestige once you've hit the level cap of 55, which provides you with a calling card and an additional class slot. A neat little caveat to the system is the inclusion of an unlock token, which can be used once to unlock any perk, gun, or kill streak right off the bat. This just means that once you've hit Prestige 7, it doesn't really feel as much of a sting giving up your weapons, knowing that you have this core loadout pretty much automatically unlocked with these tokens. Now, as I mentioned before, once you prestige, you actually get access to more custom loadouts, and this would be a great thing if it didn't reset after every prestige and wasn't couched in one of the single worst UIs I've ever seen in a AAA game. I really don't know whose idea it was to force players to scroll horizontally to look at all of their classes, but it honestly looks like something you'd see in a mobile game, not a billion-dollar franchise. So now we're going to take a look at the character customization UI now, and I have to say, things are looking a little bit better here. They seem to be in the places that we want them to be, and it seems to make a little bit of sense, but wait a minute. Why are there these little green arrows beside all of my specialists? Well, turns out every time you prestige, all of your customization options reset back to default. Great! So all of your 11 specialists will reset all of their skins back to default. All of your guns and loadouts, yeah, they're reset back to default too. Now this might not seem like a big deal, but if you prestige until the bitter end, that means that Treyarch expects you to go back into these sub-menus and pick new skins 11 times. I can tell you right now that people don't do this, because it's a pain in the ass. The funniest thing is that even if these were the best looking skins in the world, it wouldn't matter much because their UI has made it such a chore to do something that should be just 1 or 2 clicks away at most. I'm normally not the kind of person who even gets upset about this kind of stuff, but the UI is just so frustrating to use for seemingly no reason. It's not like there's a lack of screen real estate either. Like, look how much unused space there is on the screen when you first boot up multiplayer. I mean, why not add some useful buttons for your stats or loadouts so players don't have to go rooting through a Russian nesting doll of menus just to find how to complete a challenge? I know people don't believe me right now, so just watch as I try and find a specific challenge in the game's UI. You need to hit 5 buttons to see your challenge progress. I feel like I'm playing a fucking RTS just trying to navigate this hellscape of a UI. Just trying to create a class. Now, I said this review was of the game's multiplayer mode only, but I will say that I've taken a quick stab at the Blackout game mode, and it seems like a decent battle royale if that's what you're into. As long as you're not playing on the Xbox One, that is. It's a lot more fluid feeling than something like PUBG, and it really does feel well optimized. I just really don't know if it's worth paying $60 if you're not interested in multiplayer or zombies, especially when Fortnite is free. To close things off, I went into this game expecting a mediocre shooter that I'd get some mild enjoyment out of for a few weeks at most. I came out of it with a game that I still boot up daily. The multiplayer is fun, and the potential for Treyarch to add new specialists and content really makes it worthwhile to keep playing and see what they come up with. I can't entirely look past the performance issues with the game though, and it's my genuine hope that Treyarch course corrects on this stuff. Otherwise, any goodwill that they might have gained by releasing a good COD on PC will likely dissipate by the time their next release comes out, or whenever the next Battlefield gets released. But with that said, that's gonna do it for me. I know that my posting habits on this channel kinda suck in general, but if you want to make them suck a little bit less, feel free to post a comment below and recommend a game that you want to see reviewed next. As much as I love hearing my own voice, it really helps me when people let me know what's working with the channel and what isn't. YouTube's algorithm is pretty vicious for smaller channels like mine, so if you have a sec to subscribe or hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it. There's some other videos on the channel for Fallout 4 and Deus Ex that you might want to check out too. Honestly though, if you've made it this far, just thanks for watching.